Hello and welcome to Voices from the Left. I'm your host, Craig. Thanks for listening. Our quote for today: solidarity is not an act of charity, but mutual aid between forces fighting for the same objective. Samora, Machel. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Matt Littrell about mutual aid. We discuss what that is and how ensuring people's material conditions are met is the foundation of meaningful change. Matt also created a webpage for mutual aid resources, linked in the show notes. Hi, Matt. Thanks for coming back on the show. Good to have you back.
Hey, Craig, glad to be back.
Excellent. So we'll be talking about mutual aid tonight. So we'll get into it. So let's why don't we start with the basics? What is mutual aid and where did the idea come from?
Yeah, mutual aid is an ideal that's been around, basically since the beginning of anarchist and Marxist theory. One of the first people that came up with it was Peter Kropotkin, and there had been several others um, that had that had practiced mutual aid from his legacy. People like Enrico Malatesta. Um, and it's essentially just working folks, helping one another, building community, providing for each other's needs so that we're no longer reliant on the bourgeoisie, um, or their charity, their table scraps, the little benefits they get, the only thing that incentivizes them to do charity in the first place. Um, yeah, just this revolutionary philosophy. And it is the backbone of any revolutionary movement we can build on this planet.
Right on. You mentioned the charity of the bourgeoisie. That's charity in quotes, right? And it's interesting because for the most part, their charity wouldn't need to exist if they were just taxed properly. Just start with
Yeah.
that. Just tax people properly, right? Don't tax the people that make shit even less than 100,000 a year, right? Like tax the people that should be taxed. The rich and the people, not even more, right? Like yes, that would help. But like we're seeing reports now, we're recording this in February of 2024, where we're seeing reports coming from the IRS that they've pulled in like an extra hundred and like I don't know, many hundreds of millions of dollars from rich people that have otherwise illegally dodged taxes for who knows how long, right?
Yeah, they
And
dodged taxes all these years.
all these years. And I saw another article recently. There's an estimated like another 150 billion with a B in unpaid taxes that illegally unpaid taxes from, you know, definitely anyone making over $100,000, right? Because they're harder to go after, right? Because they can generally afford attorneys and shit like that. So
Yes.
it's, aside, not that we don't need it because we do, but like just doing the baseline stuff that we should be doing in society, like taxing people and making sure people aren't cheating taxes, the ones that should be paying it the most, like that would go a long way to fixing things. Right? Like,
Yeah, they if we just had something in place where they couldn't fight these decrees in court forever,
right.
but then you'd basically have every senator arrested
Yeah,
behind
pretty
bars.
right. I'm all right with that.
Exactly.
Oh man. All right. I interrupted you. So,
Imagine if Nancy Pelosi had to pay her taxes.
oh, for fuck's sake. God. Somehow her Nvidia stock keeps going up. It's really weird.
And all those defense contractors they're invested in.
Yeah. Nonsense. Um, all right. So anything else you want to say about what mutual aid is and where it came from?
So there's a few ways of doing mutual aid. You can do it. What I would call simplistic is where it's just individuals or a group of individuals doing a small mutual aid operation in their area. They because it's such a small scale thing, you don't really feel a need to go and create a structure. You don't even have to have a formal chapter of Food Not Bombs or IWW or anything like that. And
Sure.
then there's organizational mutual aid where you've reached a larger scale in your operations and and you found a use for creating that type of chapter system. You've created some type of charitable corporation. Of course, the difference between this type of charitable corporation is that it's run for the purposes of mutual aid and it's run by just your everyday working class folks, people that don't have much money. And then the one thing that needs to unite these applications is a holistic worldview. That's where you're not turning away good ideals for how to provide for your community and for other folks. So you're just gonna be open-minded. You're not gonna do this thing like anarchists who want to reject Marxist theory, and so they miss out on quite a lot of opportunities. And whereas Marxists reject a lot of anarchist theory, so they reject quite a lot of opportunities to build up their movement.
Sure. Well, and should be working together anyway, right? Like where those two paths are the same for a period of time, right? And then they diverge rather drastically, but at the beginning they're the same, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
and the
about overthrowing capitalism and the patriarchy. Like that's where you start, right? And then
and
and dismantling colonialism, right? All of those three things need to happen before socialism or anarchism can take hold.
yeah, and it's sort of like the end goal of each system also looks the same. So what gives here? But
Yeah,
yes, all of our movements, as I said, mutual aid is the backbone of every movement because it's the movement that feeds the people that is supposed to get your vote, as
right.
Parenti, very wise words from him. Um, it's like people they they don't realize the need to have genuine resources that will back the revolution because, white Western leftists just haven't pulled it off, haven't even gotten close to pulling it off. The
Right.
closest we've been was not by white people, but by the Black Panthers and by the Zapatistas and the FARC. Um, of course, the Cubans, Nicaraguans. So the mutual aid guide that we have here today that's available on our Notion page, we say it's not Granddaddy Kropotkin's guide to mutual aid. Um, that's like Windows 98, right?
Right.
Which is we're running on the good version of Windows 10. All right.
Right. So you've said it in a roundabout way a couple of times, but the you have to be able to provide for people's material conditions if you want to make substantial change, right? Especially if it means dismantling other systems that are in place that are holding back, right? And mutual aid is the way to provide those material conditions for each other, right? So what are some of the other principles of mutual aid that like people can kind of hone in on and learn about and try and maybe make a couple of changes that could maybe help themselves and help other people?
Well, for one, mutual aid is the lowest barrier of entry way to get involved in movement building. You're essentially going out and making friends and bringing people together and looking out for members of your community. And wherever you have a chance, you're trying to teach them the truth of what's going on in capitalism and taking steps to build alternatives and fight the system. So if you start building these mutual aid and not rejecting methods of providing these resources, you may be starting like a community land trust, which often is just a modern day sort of version of a commune.
Sure.
Um, and you might be starting a workers' cooperative to fuel that community. Um, Maybe even starting a union. One of the intersections between mutual aid and the labor movement is that the labor movement doesn't get anywhere if people are too afraid of losing their jobs to um to organize.
Sure.
And so, if you haven't built a community in the workplace where people are looking out for each other and they have y'all have built um some sort of safety net to do that, then you're not going to have a good time getting your movement off the ground. And um, so that's one of the purposes is we just believe that the desecration of material conditions, the risk of that happening, is the biggest barrier to any type of organizing. Another principle is there should be no beggars, should be choosers mentality. So a lot of people just want to give out their table scraps to homeless folks. Or just the cheapest food imaginable. It's the middle of winter and you're just giving out, cold sandwiches to people. When you have the means to provide a warm meal. Even in lieu of, restrictive city ordinances where you can't go out and feed homeless folks openly um, without having a sort of property, um, then you can at least like give out gift cards to a local place where these homeless folks can go and get a warm meal themselves.
Sure.
And then so we'll talk about sort of the Maoist conception of the mass line is that principle of no beggars be choosers mentality. You're just gonna go and meet these people where they are, and you're gonna survey around. So ask people what they would like, ask people what they need. You can do this with a needs assessment survey where you just collect these questionnaires. And another principle is specifically for organizational mutual aid. Wholesale, liquidations, and bulk goods are your friends because you're trying to feed as many people as possible in the community or folks that are on the street, folks that are living out of their cars. And so a lot of these are only going to be through business to business transactions. So if you do have a structured mutual aid group, that is where you can go and find those type of bargains. Even if you've created something akin to a food bank. Another principle that we have is abandoning the means of efficiency is the same as abandoning people. Because if you're not gonna take all opportunities that you can to provide for people in your community and adjacent communities, then you're just sort of leaving a lot of people behind. Another principle is nothing is too small. As we said, this is the lowest barrier of entry. Um, so you got to be helping people to survive. You can do that by providing, I don't know, free financial tips to folks, helping people find like bank account bonuses where they just have to open a checking account, move a few dollars into that checking account, and then the person will then get a bonus for that where
Mm,
they can afford to eat for another month or two,
sure.
afford to pay their bills for another month or two. Um, and referral bonuses, sort of where you referred somebody over to another service that you're currently using, and then they will get a reward for becoming a new customer for that service.
Makes sense.
A lot of people just call it like kind of gaming the system. If capitalists are going to give out free shit for for people becoming new customers, then take advantage of that and give it out as much as possible.
Right.
So that's why there was a good website for that linked called the Money Ninja.
Mm,
So they just provide all the different steps to opening these type of accounts, checkings accounts, savings, business, brokerage. That's one thing to mention for organizational mutual aid is nonprofits and charities have access to most of the same business resources as for profits. So the same type of banking accounts, credit cards, all that good stuff. And of course, those type of purchases are incentivized. Things like all the savings from credit card rewards that that your charity would get versus what you would get if you're just using a bunch of people's wages to buy things, which of course is a very finite resource, right?
yep.
Most working class people in the United States don't even have $1,000 total in savings. From statistics within the last 6 years, like every year, people don't have an extra $1,000 to cover an expense, which proves that people are not realistically temporarily inconvenienced millionaires at all. You're a
Right.
couple paychecks away from being homeless.
Right. Yep.
And another part of the mutual aid aspects is not just physically going out, feeding people and educating people, it's facilitating safe spaces. Um,
Mm,
we we saw a very harsh example, a very evil example recently of a person named Nax, an indigenous and transgender kid who was bullied at school and eventually killed by their classmates.
right. Next Benedict.
Yeah, they didn't have a safe space to go. Nobody was looking out for them. Um, they didn't have gender affirming care. And that's something that we can provide through mutual aid is these safe spaces, or at least a place where you're safe mentally, physically. You have somebody that you can talk to. Um,
Right on.
there's been countless examples of what has happened to Nax and in the last few years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sadly, that's not the first time.
Yeah, especially in the South where the danger is to queer folks, gender non-conforming folks like myself, being non-binary, is that they just keep coming after our rights, and demonizing us. And the kids suffer the most from this.
Yep.
But in despite of that, another principle of mutual aid is that we have to maintain revolutionary optimism. So we have to stay hopeful that we can win, that we can make a difference no matter how small, and that we have a purpose, a driven purpose. Because the Western left is riddled with despair and doomerism, which, it is sort of a privilege. It's a privilege of not having your life threatened. Like the Palestinians cannot afford to drown in despair because they're fighting for their lives. And we
Right.
have to think of it the same way, that we're fighting for each other, we're fighting for our communities. And that's, the purpose of being a leftist. It's just historically only white people have had the privilege of just sitting around and being doomers. So yeah, that's like, be an accomplice, not just an ally. So we have countless examples around us where, um, like the Democrats are trying to be put on this performance that they're an ally to black folks, to trans folks, but they're not doing anything for them. They might just be waving a flag around,
Right.
waving a symbol around.
Yeah. Especially right now. They're just nonsense. All right. So I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but let's get into a little bit about like specific organizations dedicated to mutual aid. Um, not only like I know Food Not Bombs is one, but um, there are others, I'm sure. So let's talk about what just about who some of them are, but also like if you know about how like their internal structure like helps what they do.
Hmm. Yeah, there's actually quite a few mutual aid organizations out here. A lot of them are recent, like they've been created during the course of the pandemic, um, which, mutual aid has been on the rise because people sort of realized nobody's looking out for us
Right.
systemically.
Yep.
And then so one mutual aid group that I'm a part of is called DSA Mutual Aid Working Group, the Democratic Socialist of America Mutual Aid Working Group. So, we believe that mutual aid and community building is essential for every chapter. So, most of what the Mutual Aid Working Group does is linking up with other chapters to advise them of how to create community and how to do mutual aid.
Hmm.
Um, you'll see with some of the social media accounts of these DSA mutual aid committees, they'll be reposting people's mutual aid requests, doing using their social media platforms to help people fundraise for themselves, so they can survive. Um, and most of us, because again, DSA is a Big Ten organization,
Yep.
people are a part of all kinds of other organizations. So that's how we sort of all come together and we're able to advise other chapters, is because of all of our experience in these spaces. So I'm going to pull up the page real quick. Anybody can become a member of the DSA, and anyone can apply to join these different working groups. Some of them quite a bit smaller than others. Mutual Aid Working Group is unfortunately one of the smallest working groups we have,
Hmm.
as I discovered after becoming a member and attending a couple of meetings. And then here's another group that mostly just exists to do fundraising for smaller organizations. It's called the Pollination Project, and they offer small grants ranging from $1,000 to $10,000. So if you're a grassroots organization, so if you start your own mutual aid working group in your community, you can apply for these types of grants,
Mm,
and that's going to be really helpful. And our mutual aid organization, Food Not Bombs, South Central Kentucky, down here. We used to be called Universal Labor Foundation because
mm,
during our union campaign, we started a nonprofit, and we were getting solidarity funds together so we could fund our campaign and create safety nets for folks who would get fired
mm.
during the course of the campaign. And unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to really get our campaign on the right track. And then the suddenness of my firing really scared a lot of our coworkers because
Right.
of the factors that we discussed in our episode about my union organizing. So you can see the embed of this grant on here where you can apply for funding. Just visit that website. There's tons of clickable links on this Notion page.
Gotcha.
Currently, this organization is not open for fundraising. So they're on winter break. I think they'll open up in the spring for anybody who comes across this podcast episode. There's another one that I am very close with. It's called Unemployed Workers United. It's mostly young people. It's a diverse group of young people that came together to aid the labor movement. Um, and over here it says the creator of it was United for Respect. So another organization, it was launched by United Food and Commercial Workers,
Mm,
originally from a campaign to organize Walmart. It was called
mm,
Our Walmart back then, and then after the UFCW sort of like spun them off, um they became United for Respect. And so they became involved in politics. They became involved in Amazon campaigns, PetSmart campaigns, and
mm.
creating other organizations like Unemployed Workers United. So we'll go and look at their page. They've even made a bunch of campaigns, like one I've been volunteering to text bank with and phone bank with. It's called Temp Workers United, where we're reaching out to people in Los Angeles, particularly trying to get with union supporters and with people who are current or former precarious laborers or temp workers
Gotcha.
and organize these workers. Um, Unemployed Workers United also did a lot of mutual aid. They started um and one of the first things they did was provide a fund for organizers. So you can see here they started at the beginning of the pandemic for that purpose.
Gotcha.
The labor movement wasn't making headlines at the beginning of the pandemic, but
Right.
it was in its early stages. And then we have another group that exists within the labor movement to provide mutual aid, coworker.com. What they do is they created something called the Coworker Solidarity Fund, so they can issue stipends to workers who are organizing. They've provided many stipends to Starbucks workers and Amazon workers. Those are the two demographics they've been supporting with stipends right now, but they're also trying to help Trader Joe's workers,
Mm,
and they on their website that I'm going to show. They also provide a general fund that they're working on. They'll probably bring that up and just start giving funds to worker organizers everywhere, that's a really exciting development. I actually received a stipend from them towards the end of 2022, for my Amazon organizing activities,
Hmm.
and it was $2,500,
Wow.
which was great. I mean, that's enough. That's enough to get somebody out of a tough situation for a while,
Right.
especially if you're somebody who's in a rural area like myself, and the money goes further. And you can use the Coworker Solidarity Fund website to create your own petitions for whatever type of organizing you're doing, and they will bring it up in their newsletter that
Hmm.
they send around weekly. And of course, you can contact them. Next organization is Your Left Pocket. So this one, it doesn't exist as organizational. It's just a group. It's a group level type of mutual aid community, and it's rather successful. But Your Left Pocket is free for anybody. There's about 8,000 members of this Facebook group.
Gotcha.
So many of them are givers, so people who are looking to contribute to mutual aid funds, and many are just people looking for mutual aid. The admins of this group will talk to anybody who wants their fundraiser shared. So they will actually vet the person who is making the mutual aid ask,
Hmm.
to make sure that it's legitimate, make sure that it's not a scam or anything. There's plenty of scams
Sure.
um, in mutual aid, and it's unfortunate. But one motto that we do have in mutual aid is that sometimes it's better to give some money to somebody that you think might be a scam, but you're not sure, than it is to risk that person going hungry.
Sure.
Because like you would just be out a few bucks. You'd be out a few bucks.
Right.
And money has no value anyway. Another mutual aid organization is One Free Community, sort of similar to Your Left Pocket. And it's more diverse than um Your Left Pocket. It's BIPOC ran. It's that's that type of project. And anybody can go and get on their Discord server,
Hmm.
or anybody can go and watch their TikToks. They also provide a lot of mental health aspects to their mutual aid. So they provide disability affirming, so making a safe place, empowering disabled people and neurodivergent people. Neurodivergent people have a lot of trouble.
Hmm.
A lot of trouble out there just getting along with neurotypical people who don't want to be conscientious of neurodivergent behaviors. And they also provide a lot of gender affirming support to folks. And I have their website. It's One Free Community. They also call themselves a digital third space. Craig, do you know what a third space is?
I do not.
Okay, so a third space was just somewhere you go besides work and home. So
Gotcha.
for many people that used to be the library. Like
Sure.
libraries are disappearing all over the country, right?
Yep.
Hangout spots are disappearing. you either go to work, home, and anywhere else you want to go and hang out is essentially just going to be somewhere you have to pay for. You have to pay to be there.
Right.
So a third space is a space where you can be without worrying about it being monetized.
Gotcha.
And it's, I mean, shit, Craig. You probably remember the days when people would always hang out at the mall and go to the arcade for free or whatever, right?
I do. Yes. Yes, I am old enough to remember that. Yeah. Well, and your point about the libraries, it's like it is, timely because within the last month or two, New York City just decided they weren't going to have their libraries open on the weekend. New York City decided that. Like, makes zero sense. Zero fucking sense. And of
Mm.
course, their mayor is a fucking clown show. He's a former cop. So,
Yeah.
we'll pump 100 million into the NYPD, but we'll shut down the libraries on the weekends. Like it's the opposite of what they should be doing, but
Wasn't wasn't Bloomberg a mayor of New York?
yeah, but this is Eric Adams that's doing this.
Yeah, but New York's always had terrible governors.
Oh yeah, yeah, their mayors and the people running for governor have not been great. That's for sure. I mean, Bloomberg was a mayor, Giuliani obviously. Uh he's, he's his own hot mess, right? But there were others too, obviously, that were no good. But
Mm.
yeah, it's just the idea that there's no library open on the weekend in New York City, or at least some of them are closed at any rate. That's baffling. Baffling a city that big would close their public libraries at all. Like the city like that, you could easily, I'm sure, make a argument for them being open 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah, they should be. Oh
But
man.
yeah, at any rate, your
I
point is well
mean,
taken.
there's people that are night owls too, people that are up all night because
Sure.
I don't know. You either work the night shift or you're in a night shift routine. I mean, you need somewhere to go.
Right.
Being on night shift, you're just essentially sometimes living your life where nothing is open within
Yep.
within the hours that you're awake.
Yep.
Especially because of the pandemic, none of these businesses are open 24 hours anymore.
Right. Well, it's third shift is obviously the worst, but like even for someone who works first shift, like banks are open the same hours you're gonna work,
Yeah, you can't.
right?
I mean,
Like you
yeah.
can't. It's just nonsense, right? And well, we're open Saturdays. Yeah, that's when people don't want to be going to the fucking bank. They want to have their shit taken care of by Thursday afternoon, so that by the time the weekend comes, if they're you know if they're able to, they can fucking go do whatever they need to do, not go to the bank. Idiots. Anyway,
I know. And back to one free community. Something we talk about with disabled folks in the Discord chat is that oftentimes nowhere is safe for disabled folks. I mean, in these days, you have all these people who just refuse to wear a mask in public. If you're going to be organizing mutual aid, it's written all over the notion, but you need to wear a mask out there. Because disabled folks in one free community, our Discord server and spaces, they always bring up that they don't even feel comfortable going to a lot of mutual aid events that are designed for disabled people because the organizers aren't wearing a mask. And one free community also they also do virtual protests, stuff like that.
cool.
If you're and I can't stress this enough, if you're not hyper local, with your mutual aid organizing. So if you have a website that shows up on search engine results, then you're going to want to provide resources on your page that can direct people to something that is local to them. Because you can imagine how much of a hassle it is to find mutual aid resources near you.
Sure.
So, and they also provide these other communities where you can go. So you don't just have to go to this one Discord center.
Sure.
Anyway, let's go to the next organization. So there's a few things that are local in Kentucky, which I really like that we have some things. There's some states out there that don't even have a single mutual aid project.
Hmm.
So Appalachian Community Meals, they exist in Berea, Kentucky. It's a very progressive area by Kentucky standards. Um, and so yeah, they provide space for mutual aid and community. One of their most successful projects is they've installed community pantries,
Hmm.
um, where people can just go and pick up food, food that is donated there. And the organization tries to keep those pantries stocked as much as they can. But if you have trouble getting volunteers, it's a little bit harder to keep those stocked.
Right
But
on.
there's also they've tried to work on community fridges, sort of an outdoor fridge that anybody can access. And I'll open their their page, their Facebook page that anybody can see. The head, the sort of the person that created Appalachian Community Meals, her name is Amanda, and she was instrumental to the Moneyless Society podcast. Have you heard of
Hmm.
that, Craig?
I have, yes.
Yeah, and they've been doing good work. And so there's one family that they're trying to raise money for and other projects. So Berea is located in Madison County. They have a tenants union in that county as well. That
Excellent.
is all of them are joining together to br bring these community meals, and they're also protesting the Safer Kentucky Act, which is House Bill 5 that's going through,
Hmm.
and it has provisions that criminalize homelessness. Then we have the Lexington, Kentucky Pride Center, which is an LGBTQ service which hosts the Pride events. However, they also provide mutual aid services, gender affirming services for queer youth, and other folks. You don't just have to be young to get involved with the Lexington Pride Center. So they have clothing donations, children's clothes. They partner with a mission to provide that, which is interesting. A lot of churches will partner with your mutual aid project if it doesn't have too many revolutionary overtones.
Yeah.
You sort
Yeah.
of do have to hide that
Sure.
if you want any chance of working with church services. I know
Yeah.
Craig has a lot to say about church services.
I will refrain for now.
But they've also made services like the trans surgery fund to help get gender affirming care, which is becoming criminalized and made unavailable, especially across the South.
Yep. Man,
getting your hormones, getting hormone access, part of gender affirming care. And so, yeah, you can see everything on here. They even provide for deaf people and other disabled folks, elders, accessing healthcare, food, things for survivors of domestic abuse, SA, um, that form of assault,
gotcha.
mental health providers, and if you can, just check out the Lexington Pride Center. Then there's Eastern Kentucky Mutual Aid. They're a group that is sort of connected to showing up for racial justice. So that's one cool thing about the origins of this group. And so they provide direct assistance to Appalachians, people
Mm,
in Eastern Kentucky, where there's not a lot of jobs, because coal country has been devastated for a very long time.
yep.
And of course, helping with housing rights and social justice, part of their connection to showing up for racial justice. Okay, so I'm going to get out of stuff that's local. Some of the more well-known mutual aid organizations that are spun off as worker cooperatives is like Cooperation Jackson, which is in Jackson, Mississippi. They're helping to build a solidarity economy. The concept of that is an economy where things are socially owned instead of in capitalist hands.
Right.
But a lot of that is just changing a lot of what people refer to as a solidarity economy is this ideal of just almost like legally mandating that businesses be worker cooperatives instead of the typical capitalist enterprise.
Right.
So still having socialized ownership, but still going by a market economy as worker co-ops do.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Co-op Jackson, they're a group of cooperatives too. So they've started so many different cooperatives, and they've sprung up these co-op places in other states. So they've actually done something revolutionary, which is that they didn't just stay as a small project in Mississippi that had one purpose. They've branched out. One thing that is really counterproductive in mutual aid is is the ideal of sort of these hippie communes where people get together and they form an isolationist community.
Sure. As opposed to being in a network.
Yeah, as opposed to actually doing things, as opposed to branching out, they just sort of stay to themselves and they enjoy the fruits of their own collective labor, but they don't like try to create more communes, for instance. They don't
Right.
Yeah, they don't expand upon that model. And so there's a few more of the different co-ops inspired by Jackson down here. All of them of which sort of have the same origins of being inspired by the revolutionary co-ops that came about during the Spanish Civil War, where these anarchists were building cooperatives and communes everywhere. The most prolific among them, the Mondragon cooperatives,
Mm.
which sort of pioneered this model. And one more thing we have to talk about that is being criminalized as a form of mutual aid is bail funds.
Yep.
So one of them is Stop Cop City Bail Fund that was bailing out activists who were trying to protect the Waylani forests, and unfortunately they got so much repression. They have 60 people that are being indicted with RICO charges
Right.
by the attorney general down there. And
Shit
that's your
is shit is just so infuriating. It's like
yeah.
it's just eh, anyone who thinks that cops are not tools of capital lives in an extremely privileged place. Physically where they live, and metaphorically, right? And mentally, right? It's just there's a reason top cities are going up because they don't want to lose control. The capitalist class.
Yeah,
That's what they're for. That's what it's for.
Cop cities are just gonna go up everywhere. Like there's one that is being proposed in Tennessee, near Nashville,
Yep.
of all places. And so it's gonna be built like right in the Smoky Mountains. And so that's a lot closer to me. And
Right.
God.
Well, and like let's just I'll talk a little bit about the one in Atlanta in particular because they're and I'm sure it's happening in the other ones too, but I know for a fact that the Atlanta one has like an urban warfare like training facility in it, right? And
Yeah.
it's like that's not because people are concerned that we're going to have paratroopers from Russia drop in on us and we'll have to fight them in the streets. They're training them that way so that they can help control protesters. That's what they're training them that way for.
Yeah,
That's what
like
it's all about. It has nothing to do with threats from without, right? They see the people rising up as a threat to capital, a threat to the status quo, um, and they want to make sure that people just keep being, held down by the capitalist class. That is what's happening.
yeah, and in the state of Georgia, like they chose Atlanta, a black majority city.
Right.
Um, and that's where they chose to set this one up. But it's also a state that has this program where they send their cops to Israel
Yep.
to learn how to brutalize citizens at home, the same way that they brutalize Palestinians over there.
Right. Yep. And it's not just Atlanta cops. It's fucking pigs all over the country go to Israel for that training.
Yeah, there's multiple programs all across the country, but it's just the one that most people know about is the one out of Georgia.
Right. It's just got the most press.
Yeah.
Yep.
But and I sort of have to talk about this. We have bail funds in Kentucky too, like one in Louisville, that is facing, you know, that is facing this type of repression too. And it's not even like a revolutionary organization or anything. It doesn't have ties to anarchists or anything like that. But
Right.
with that Safer Kentucky Act that I mentioned, you can't have an organization to pay someone's bail of an amount more than $5,000. Who gets a bail that is less than $5,000? That's like unheard
It's
of.
probably no one.
Yeah,
That's why the law is written that way.
such such a small amount.
Yeah, it's intentional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's national networks of bail funds. Yeah, support these projects.
Right.
Because if you're an activist, even if you're a mutual aid activist, you always run the risk of being locked up. You can get locked up at a union rally.
Right.
And that's sort of I was watching something earlier. I sent it to the group, just somebody talking about there's this inherent risk of being an activist. The Black Panthers provided that extent of mutual aid to where they became a target because they were providing alternatives for the black community to the white man's scraps, you
Right.
know, towards the very little welfare programs that existed at that time, which was not extensive at all.
Right. Well, and what they were doing was hated so much by by capitalists that the FBI killed Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
Like that's it's it's fucking nonsense.
And of course, like they obviously faced worse repercussions for their activism than these bail funds have thus far. But we're getting to a point where those type of repercussions are starting to happen again. Like several Stop Cop City activists who have already been killed by the police. Um,
Right.
in local Food Not Bombs, like the chapter out of Houston, that has received more than 80 tickets at this point, I believe,
That's
just for going out and feeding people.
yeah. The last count I heard from Houston was 92. And
90
that and that was a couple of weeks ago. And I think there's now, if I remember correctly, they now got an injunction from the courts down there to prevent further tickets being issued until their lawsuits get that they've already filed for the tickets they've been given works its way through the courts.
right
So
on. And it's good that that chapter has enough resources and volunteers to where they can challenge this.
right,
But for somebody who's just looking to get something started in their area, you might want to go the route of um being a little bit more subversive, right? You don't want to be
sure,
as open because if your tiny organization gets shut down in the early stages, it might just build a fear in the community.
right,
So we're already at that point where we can, in the Notion page, where we can talk about Food Not Bombs. So yeah, it's a global movement. Food Not Bombs spans multiple countries, but of course, it came from the United States. And yeah, it's a global movement, and the founder's vision is that it would give out free vegan and vegetarian meals. However, it's sort of a misconception that that is a requirement. It's not a requirement. You can give out meals that contain meat. Um, However, it's sort of like try to provide for the dietary restrictions. So that's why it's necessary to do needs assessments and surveys to see what the people want. Because you might be in somewhere like Dearborn, Michigan, where the population is a lot of Muslim people, and if you bring out something that contains pork, they cannot eat it. So abide by giving out some halal food.
gotcha.
At Food Not Bombs, we also do not do the beggars can't be shoot the beggars can't be choosers mentality. So we also collaborate with other groups. However, Food Not Bombs can do better at this. We need to get together with unions, with anti-war movements, feminists, just any type of activists, and help them realize how essential mutual aid is to building their projects. So meeting like offer your services to a fledgling labor movement in your area. You
Hmm.
know about you know about a campaign, offer to have a barbecue for these workers and bring everybody together. But Food Not Bombs has been good about attending strikes and feeding folks there, helping to provide for those workers. There's a last part of our segment of mutual aid is another subversive way to get into providing for your community. The biggest portion of people's bills is the rent or the mortgage. The mortgage is just renting from the bank, but
Right.
you know, um,
Yeah.
so yeah, folks, in the Black community and in queer communities and indigenous communities, they have done rent parties. Rent parties is essentially where you're all getting together and having a party. There might be an entrance fee that covers food for people who want to have the party.
Hmm.
And the overall goal is to meet the rent needs of the individuals who live in that unit. Um, so that's just one of the more attractive options. Of course, these were targeted because, you might have your music too loud or whatever,
Of
or there
course.
might be a little bit of debauchery going on at rent parties historically. But they are a mutual aid tool, but you just want to be careful about how you throw a rent party and sort of the activities that you allow to happen there. And also think about that it's stuff going on inside of somebody's home.
Right. Right.
And there's a video that's linked, a Black people's history of parties, which a lot of it is about rent parties and how Black people sort of pioneered those.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Matt, for sharing all of that. That's fantastic. Yeah. This has been great. Again, Matt, thank you for pulling this all together. This is a lot of good information. Um, and like I said, this is on a website Matt created. And I will have a link to it in the show notes. And we'll get Matt's already got it in his link tree. I'll get it in mine. Um, also. So anyone can go in here and just review this and try and get connected with people in their area if they can. Um, so yeah, this is great.
Yeah, really do in-depth research on the topics, on the subjects, and how to create your own mutual aid. Really build up some kind of alternative structure. That's what we want to see happen on the left. That's the direction we want to see people going. Um, and again, remember to wear a mask when you're out there trying to organize.
Right on. That does it for the show. Thanks for listening. Voices from the Left is a presentation of the Anti Capitalist Podcast Network. Special thanks to Nick Josephs for the use of the theme song. You can find Nick on Spotify or on the web at nickjosephs.com. Don't forget to rate and review on whichever platform you listen. If you'd like to support the show, you can subscribe at patreon.com/voicesfromtheleft or donate at buymeacoffee.com/voicesfromtheleft. All the links will be in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and solidarity.